1 in 4 people in the UK will struggle with a mental health illness, and it's 1 in 2 people in hospitality. So that's 50% of our staff. I mean, I'd be very interested to see what the the statistics are this year.
Quite.
Because with all these restrictions in place, there's a lot of people that won't be going back to work, and we have no answers for that at the moment. But it is very, very concerning.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sherry Jacobson, and this is Therapy Lab, a podcast dedicated to therapy, mental health, and the art of well-being. In this episode, we are joined by award-winning chef Andrew Clarke to talk about his story. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, Sherry, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. We almost met several months ago. But here we are meeting for the first time.
Yes.
I know quite a bit about you and have tasted your food, but our audience don't know much about you. Where to begin? How would you describe who you are and what you do?
I'm a chef. I've been a chef for the last 20 odd years. And I guess that's the way that's what I still call myself. But I stopped cooking about a year ago. And during the latter part of my years in the kitchen, I set up a campaign around mental health called Pilot Light. So in the last year, I've been spending a lot of time on that, and obviously in this kind of COVID world, I'm kind of glad I don't have a restaurant. It's been a real tough time for restaurants, but as the world has been opening back up, I am consulting again and due to open something very soon. Next week, in fact. So yeah, I'm kind of back in the kitchen a little bit, but I think I'm spending more time within mental health and well-being and understanding or trying to learn a bit more about food and the gut and its links to mental health.
Wow, fascinating. Take us back to the beginning. How did you get into cooking in the first place?
Well, I often joke that I'm a failed musician. Which, through my teenage years, I was not good at school, but I loved playing guitar, and I just figured that one day I'd be a rock star traveling the world, touring and making loads of money. And, the reality of being a touring musician, I was in a bunch of bands and stuff in my teens, and, it's certainly not enough to pay the bills. So I jumped in a kitchen in which to support my music. And there I stayed. I joke now that, 20 years later, I'm back in bands again. So, finally I've made a little bit of money that I can go back and, pay for my music, so to speak.
So you have that a little on the side?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just important for me to go back to my first love, which was music. But, food has done me well. And I think I realised that I was, doing quite well in cooking in the kitchens. You get a little bit more responsibility, a little bit more money, and then the next minute, I can't do that gig or I can't play this thing. You slowly adopt the chef lifestyle, and then you realise you haven't played music for quite a while, and that was it. But it's done me well. I mean, I've got to travel around the world and open restaurants, and there's so many times where I've used the analogy, compared chefs with musicians, and the performances that we put on, the writing of albums, or opening restaurants. So I've managed to live my rock star lifestyle vicariously through cooking, I think.
Yeah. Are there equal challenges in both, or different challenges?
Completely. I mean, it is hard. You're putting a lot of your personality on a plate, as you would be if you were creating something. It's a very creative industry. The hours are long. It's tough. There are times when you question what you're doing. I mean, that definitely happens. But it is about the rewards, and I think, particularly for myself, I've always tried to be in open kitchens where you can see the guests. That's like putting on a show every night, and when you do it well, and your audience, your guests are really into it. You get a lot of really good feedback, it makes you feel good. But you know when you've had a a bad service as well, and you feel that as well. You know that you've either your team, yourself, whatever, something's not been right, and that can affect you as well. So there were huge highs and quite significant lows as well.
Before we started taping, we were talking about critics.
Yes.
And what's your experience been of restaurant critics?
Well, generally I've fared pretty well, even at times when I don't necessarily believe I've earned it. I mean, I've been, I think, well supported by some of the nation's biggest critics. But I think, quite often you're your own biggest critic, and I know that I can do better in areas, or I know that I've, might have got a good review, but I don't think it was the best quality we've done. And there are, so many reasons for that. But usually I'm on the good side of them, which is fine.
Well, you've had great acclaim, and I'm just wondering, does it take a psychological toll to know that you are being evaluated by diners?
Yes, I think with St Leonard's, we got good reviews, but I know how difficult that restaurant was, and everything that was going on that didn't make it a perfect restaurant. And while I loved many parts of it, there were things that just weren't right. And when you see the TripAdvisor reviews, the general public, they're the ones that really, you take into account a bit more, because I think critics, as harsh as they can also be your friend. They understand it, but Joe Public don't. And it's them that actually you really need to appeal to, because they're the people that are going to be paying the bills. And I know that, there'll be TripAdvisor reviews and other reviews that we've had where when you're trying something that's a little bit ambitious, to some people you can fall flat on your face, because just some people don't get it. Or there's times when you just don't deliver on the promise, and they're absolutely right in not getting it.
Yeah, I ate there, absolutely loved it. Can't wait to see your next one opens up, so that I can be a non-critical enjoyer of your meals. If you can talk a little bit about your earlier experiences, what was the first time you've experienced psychological difficulty that had a sort of life-changing impact on you?
I probably explore this a lot now myself, in understanding myself more. I've been going on my own journey with mental health, and what to look out for, what triggers me. Overall, I think I'm a very, very positive person, and have lived my life like that. When I was 20, I guess it was the turning point from kind of musician to chef. But when I was 20, I was looking at life in prison, and for no fault of my own, just an act of self-defense. But I was very unlucky, and that for me, it spun me on a different direction. And I felt a range of emotions. I felt very shocked, then I felt very angry and kind of bitter at times, and definitely through my 20s, I was found not guilty, by the way, but through my 20s, there were times when I was, a head chef, doing well, but also just kind of bitter that I didn't become the musician that I wanted to be. And I blamed it a lot on that episode and what happened. And that led me to drinking and taking a lot of drugs and having, significant problems there. And I think that's it. I think that has been something that I'd swept under the carpet for too long. I started talking quite publicly on social media and in the kind of hospitality circles about my own mental health struggles in my late 30s, where I thought I'd recovered from things. I thought I'd put that under the, in the past, but I was just sweeping things under the carpet. And I was putting my happiness in other people. So when other people, kind of left my life, I had nothing. And that was it. I was very depressed and suicidal, and I had to go on that journey to just kind of make myself happy, be happy with my own, in my own skin, and not rely on anyone else. And yeah, it meant digging deep. It meant kind of making peace with my past. And now I look back. I look back at times. Was I a happy child? I think I was. I think I was a loner, and I think I still am. I know lots of people, but I think now I've got to that point where I'm actually happier in my own company than being out with big groups of people. I think it's a constant quest to find what's making you happy, or what as you change, as every year brings new challenges. You just have to keep looking at your life, reevaluating what do you need, what's gonna is it more exercise, is it better food, all these things that can just improve your mental well-being. I think.
What do you think may have been one or more of the sort of catalysts to embarking on the journey, and how did you go about finding your way through it?
The actual catalyst was a relationship breakup, and that just came at a time where it was the tail end of a year where I wasn't happy with my work. I was working for a company and a job that I wasn't proud, and I'm seeing people around me just doing sort of amazing things, and I was chasing the money. I went for money rather than job satisfaction, and as that started falling apart, I was hoping to turn to my partner at the time and trying to get some solace, someone to say, look, it's okay, we've got this, I'm going to support you, and there wasn't that. So as those things fell apart, I realised I was very much alone. Yeah. What was the second part?
And the second part is, how did you go about finding your way through it all?
Well, I think I still am. Importantly, it's that I've got through the worst of it, and I'm not suicidal. But again, I still take the knocks like everyone else. And I think this year alone with COVID, there's been a lot of challenges. What's good for me now is that I know the way to navigate through this. So I'll still wake up and there'll be days where it's like, why? But, I dig deep and I get through it. For me, there was a change of lifestyle. There was knowing, I think a turning point actually was just, in the suicidal phase, of like not wanting to pass that pain on to anyone else. So, having kind of being very open with family and friends and seeing how affected they were by what I was saying, I realised I had to get through this. And I still tell myself that, there was, even if there were 1 or 2 dark days, I'm just like, no, the darkest are gone. We'll get through this. And I focus on the things that I know help me. And it could be everything from, I'm talking about meditation, but meditation is very, very important. Eating the right things, staying hydrated, exercise, but even kind of the right music, listening to things that are uplifting and not, depressing. So there's a whole load of things. I talk about my kind of 12 pillars of good mental health, but that works for me. If anyone ever asks me, for advice, I say, look, this is what works for me. Maybe pick and choose a few that work for you. Maybe create your own ones. But it's a good way of just writing down the things that are important that make you feel good, and use those as that energy to get you through.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Therapy Lab. If you'd like to transform your life with therapy, get 10% off your first session with any therapist on harleytherapy.com. Just use the code THERAPYLAB when you book your session. How did you get to your 12 pillars? Did it involve experimentation? Did you take advice from other sources?
I think there are I looked at the NHS 5 pillars for good mental health, which some of them overlap, and there's 1 or 2 on there that I just, a bit random if you ask me. Mine have evolved. Mine would definitely 10 to start with, and it was just a case of me writing them down and saying, look, okay, what do I believe in? And it could be, again, going back to the music thing, it was like, when you're in the darkest times, don't listen to sad songs. That's not going to make you feel good. But I remember just putting, I love metal and like heavy rock music. But I'd put things that are quite powerful and uplifting. And on my way to work, it was making me feel, okay, I've got this. I'm feeling a bit stronger, So just making little notes of that. And I think I made more of a conscious effort to work out what they were when people were asking me for advice. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? What would I say to people? Now, this is what works for me. So that's when I really started exploring it. It went from 10 to 12. I think we're probably on about 14. I share them
the
amongst the
expanding
pilot
pillars.
light. Yeah,
Right?
because we've broken some of them down to think a bit more about, the kind of micro subjects, where it was like, at one point it was about what you consume. And we can talk about food as being a very important thing and gut health, but also consuming water, maybe more so than alcohol, so there was those bits. But then it became like, well, what about the media and, the kind of mainstream media that just don't always do our mental health good, and social media. So these are all things we're consuming. So we just started breaking that down, and you can come into a few more subjects.
And how do you know which one and to deploy them when you're feeling in need of it? Is it automatic? Do you remind yourself with various prompts?
There's the ones that are. There are the ones that are very obvious. So straight away, am I exercising enough? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating the right things? So they're the very obvious ones. And I know that it's usually them that affect me immediately. Social media, for instance, I have a certain presence on social media. But even that, whether it's the amount of time you spend on it or just scrolling through and your mind telling you things that, you're kind of making it up really. But you can see the wrong things. Your mind can pick up on the wrong story. So it's just like, okay, limit your time on the social media. Make sure you're exercising, meditate. And then when I put that back in, I generally find myself better off. Breathing, something as simple as breathing deeply. You do that for a few minutes and you're like, okay, things are better. There's more clarity.
Can you explore a little bit about the connection with gut health and mental health as far as?
Yeah, I mean, this is a new subject for me. I think there are people that are doing works on it, but it's not enough. And I think during COVID, Pilot Light's plan for the year was, like most restaurants, were just kind of put on the side, and we had to find a way of keeping the business alive. We were very relevant because everyone was turning to us for mental health questions and advice and stuff. But without the hospitality industry, as it was kind of completely locked down, it was like, well, we don't have a business. And I say business because we're there to kind of support the industry. We have staff to pay and we have to pay the bills. So, but we didn't want to be a charity. We wanted to be a bit more progressive than that. But without hospitality, we didn't have anything. But we wanted to stay relevant. So we looked at what we could do moving forward, and looking at the fact that, both Doug, my partner, and I have been chefs, first and foremost. Can we do something more around the mental health and the food that we're eating, and, exploring kind of recipes that might be better for mental well-being rather than, just exploring recipes that are just about, general health. So that's something that we're working on. I've done a couple of little events around it anyway. And I've spent the most part of lockdown just reading up and understanding a bit more about certain ingredients. I think it also relates back to just having good food anyway. I mean, whether you want to explore whether a cauliflower has certain cognitive functions, you know what I mean? Actually, just eating good food, I think, is a really good way of, I mean, it certainly brings a table together. It brings strangers together. You can feel really good with what you eat. And I know when I eat bad, and I sometimes still eat bad, that, I'll start feeling a bit shitty for it.
What is the difference to you between good and bad?
Well, I try where possible to eat as organic and not too much meat, certainly not too much dairy or eggs. So I think for the best part, I try and have an 80% plant-based diet, and I feel good for it. I have much more energy, and when I feel good and energetic, then I think my mind is better for it. That said, every now and then, I want to eat like a Chinese takeaway or something, a bit trashy. And I make no apologies. If I do that too many times, then I have to apologize to myself for it. But I know I'll feel a bit, I'm not, I'm not like, I like to enjoy my life. I like to treat myself when need be. I don't want to be like, complete, I wouldn't just go on a complete health kick for the rest of my life. I think there's having to worry what I eat all the time with, that's not good. But I just enjoy food. I just want to make sure that I eat the right things when my body's telling me. And it is really about listening to your body more.
Yeah.
When you know you're eating well, you're going to feel good. When you eat the wrong things over a period of time, then expect things to not be great.
Well, I'm with you on that. I love food. I love your food.
Thank you.
I also am primarily plant-based as well, and I feel very well and healthy on it. The podcast that you're doing, Skull Session.
Yes.
Tell us about that. And is it a pilot light?
Yeah,
production?
but it is pilot light. I think, again, it was just like, what could we do to stay relevant and also not be trying to navigate through the COVID crisis. It was just like, okay, let's try and do something that isn't just about hospitality now. So Skull Session is pilot light, but it's also not so much the pilot light brand. It's a brand of its own. It's about mental health, but it's also about, well-being. And again, maybe it touches upon the kind of 10, 12, 14 pillars, whatever it is, that, we've been talking about. Loosely, it was like, we might find a subject and we then find a guest that fits in that subject and we can start exploring it. So during lockdown, I started doing yoga and I was just like, blown away by the energy from that. It was really good, and I wish I'd done it a lot sooner in my life. So we felt it was only right to have our yoga instructor come on, who is an ex-chef, and he talks about his own journey. So that's episode 4. But he talks about his own journey from chef and his own mental health struggles, and then how he found yoga and ultimately stepped out of the kitchen. We've had a few chefs on there. We've had other people that are just kind of doing good things. I think there is always a little link around food somewhere. But we feel that if we can create a podcast that has just inspiring people telling their stories, then it's there for everyone.
And there was some statistic even before lockdown, about 73% of people in hospitality suffered at one point some sort of mental health concern. Is that sort of the 8 in 10 approximately struggle? Is that...
If it's gone up, I mean, the one that we use is 1 in 4 people in the UK will struggle with a mental health illness. And it's 1 in 2 people in hospitality. So that's 50% of our staff. I mean, I'd be very interested to see what the the statistics are this year. Because I know how it's affected, even some of the strongest minded chefs, because, some are losing their businesses, some have lost it, some are just on the edge. So it will be interesting. I think there are ways, and again, why I talk loudly about it is that I know that hospitality, it's a tough job. I've enjoyed it personally, but I could have done it. I could have made it easier for myself. I mean, if I hadn't had the drink and drug issues, then I would probably be a better chef. I would have, it's about that kind of stamina for service. I mean, we often liken services to, let's say a footballer, or even the footballer's career. You start in young and then you move into management. Playing a game of football, these guys might play once or twice a week, and we're doing these services, 8 services a week, 9 services a week. Why don't we look after ourselves like athletes? Because we're doing that, and it's exhausting, it's mentally exhausting. So I think it was just about kind of, trying to work with people to change the narrative around it. I think that it's a great career. It's not for everyone. But I feel that there's a lot of people that drop out too soon when we can start, working with each other, looking after our troops a bit more and trying to get a bit more longevity for everyone.
Yeah. So is any advice that you would give to people who are going, I mean, it's clearly a very, very difficult time with restaurant closures and uncertainty over how many people can dine at any one time and curfews, etc. Any pointers as to how they can get through this period?
It's a really tough one. I'm really not sure I even have the answer for that at the moment. I think that we are, to some extent, just waiting for the government to do something. There was a lot of people that are, the industry itself is shouting loudly about it, and I think as long as we can come together as one of the UK's biggest, sectors, we just need to put the pressure on the government to help. I mean, it was good that Rishi helped through the kind of furlough, and I know that many people benefited from that. But we also fear what's happening soon, that, furlough will come to an end. And, with all these restrictions in place, there's a lot of people that won't be going back to work. Yeah. And we have no answers for that at the moment, but it is very, very concerning.
Do you have any predictions as to where the food industry or hospitality in general is going? Because it seemed as if there were new fantastic restaurants opening up, certainly in London and probably in the rest of the UK in recent times. We're almost spoiled for choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot more people, not everyone, but a lot of people were eating out on a more frequent basis than before. Now with subsequent to the lockdown period, a lot of people are cooking at home and relearning this skill of making food. Where do you envisage the restaurant industry moving?
Well, I think, again, it depends what goes on. I think if most restaurants can navigate through it by, giving what the public a great place to go and dine, but similarly maybe giving them great boxes to go and cook themselves at home. I think definitely from where I am living in East London, a lot of the neighbourhood restaurants became very, very important to the public, much more so because, people are stuck in their neighbourhoods. Before the restaurants could open back up while there was lockdown, a lot of the restaurants turned into little delis or did takeaways and stuff. So they became the neighbourhood champions, and I really like that. I hope that the public can support that more, realise how important they were. It is a tough time. I felt that, yes, it was part of why Pilot Light started as well, is to kind of get more longevity out of chefs, because there was pre-COVID, more and more restaurants opening up every day, and yet fewer and fewer staff to come and, work in them. However, things have changed. I don't want to be that guy that says there are some restaurants that shouldn't exist. But yeah, there's a lot of crap out there, and I just hope the good restaurants, particularly independents, can get through this and, support this, give people jobs. I'm hoping that there's a few, like the big corporates that just kind of push the independents out of certain areas and sterilise neighbourhoods. I hope that I hope they don't spring up, but unfortunately I think they will be. But I'm here for independent restaurants. I really like to see those thrive during this time.
And what support do you think is best for people in the hospitality industry to avail themselves of? How would someone get started if they're struggling
with mental health? There's a lot of people you can talk to. We would hope that once things are somewhat back to normal, we hope that we can work more with restaurants to provide the tools. So firstly, they can go to their, line managers or, their bosses and just talk it through and see what can be done. Other than that, there are a lot of little initiatives now that we work with through Pilot Light. So really coming to us is good, that we can start signpost these things. If crisis point, there are people like Shout and Samaritans, and we work mostly with Hospitality Action, who have been doing a fantastic job through this, through lockdown and COVID. So there are people that you can talk to. I would feel that Pilot Light would be the best place to go, and that's really what we're trying to do, is make sure that our website now has all the tools that people need and all the signposting for more advice.
Excellent that you are becoming more of a resource for people who are struggling.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you your views on therapy.
My views, well, I mean, I had therapy. I tried hypnotherapy, which I believe in the subconscious, and you know, I think meditation helps, and you know, certain parts of meditation where you're telling your subconscious something, you know, you come, if it's words of positivity and you know things, and you're just letting it settle in before you go to sleep. So I believe in hypnotherapy. I didn't do it for very long. I'd like to explore it more at some point. And then the guy that made the biggest impact really was he's a psychotherapist for the elite forces, like the SAS. So he's an ex-SAS soldier himself, and he's also a motivational speaker. So I ended up going to his office, walking in like a completely broken man, and then walking out with my chest held up, because I think he found that there was something that didn't want to give up, and he pulled that person out, and you know, just worked on me until like I was really, you know, proud to be who I was. So I did.
Great. So how long was that for, and is it something that you would still consider doing if
I
need
mean,
be?
It wasn't for long, but I think I'll try and get him on the podcast actually, because he's such an interesting guy, and he came to, when we first launched Pilot Light, he came and did a talk with that as well. So it's not, it is therapy, but it's also, it was mixed in with like just finding, there was a bit of motivational technique in there as well, I think. But really interesting guy.
Sounds it. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your story, and how things have evolved for you restaurant-wise. Can you tell us about what restaurant we're going to be looking forward to, and also where to reach Pilot Light?
Well, Pilot Light is pilotlightcampaign.com. So you can find it on there. We're also on social media as exactly the same, particularly Instagram more than anything. So Pilot Light Campaign. And the Skull Sessions you can find on literally all podcast platforms at the moment, and soon to be YouTube. So that will be coming soon. And then the Tram Shed project, which is the old Tram Shed restaurant in Shoreditch, opens next week. So we'll be there for a little bit. And I've got a few other things in the pipeline. Hopefully, there might be one or two other restaurants happening next year.
Well, I will look forward to that. My stomach anticipates it with great delight. And thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And for being with us. Thanks for listening to Therapy Lab. Do hit subscribe to keep up to date with new episodes. To find private, affordable therapy from around the world, visit harleytherapy.com today to transform your life. We'll see you next time.